Good morning, Energy. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody's doing well. Um, we are at the tail end of July, which is insanely crazy to think about that we are walking into August already. But what that means is obviously we've gone over for the past few weeks, and we are having new forms coming out Thursday, so August 1st. So again, one of the things that I'm just going to start this out with right away is referring to commission. We need to make sure that we're referring to that as compensation, and it is always negotiable. So make sure that you are stating that as well, but really try not using that word commission and flip-flopping the language to compensation. The other one that actually came to my attention this week that we need to be really careful about, and I've said this actually, the last brokerage I was at, we had kind of started implementing this, but now we need to be really careful. So when you use the word free evaluation, that kind of opens up a lot of different things in a seller's mind. So what they're basically stating at the class that I went to this week is not to use the word free. So when I think about it, I would go in and I would do, a home valuation, or people would click on different things. And I basically have always said complimentary evaluation. I kind of take that word free out because of the fact that when you're thinking like free, you're thinking you're getting something. If we're doing a market analysis on somebody's property, we are giving them all of that information, but if we end up getting the listing, then it's not free anymore. There is compensation involved. So I do just want to make sure that everybody's kind of just being very careful about their wording. Anything with the word free in it, I am taking out of all of my marketing, all of my advertising on that end, because of the fact that I don't want to mislead anybody walking forward, and their interpretation of what's free can be very different from my interpretation of what's free. So we're walking into a lot of different things, and a lot of verbiage is going to be, interpreted a lot differently than what it used to be. So what I would like to do is I first want to, because I know we didn't get enough time before. We went through these forms last week. We went through them a couple weeks ago. Those are recorded. So I want you guys to go back into SweetAssist or go into our YouTube channel to look over those forms. And we walked through them. Randy walked through them, and then I walked through them last week. What I really want to focus on today is if there's any questions for this August 1st rollout, or any questions in reference to some of the information that was coming across. I want to make sure that we get that answered for you guys, and that you do feel comfortable moving forward with these rollouts that are happening on August 1st. So again, those are coming through Transaction Desk on the 1st. My disclaimer that I had told you guys last week is I'm 100% positive that Transaction Desk is going to crash on Thursday. They had said the activity around Transaction Desk is going to be very high that day. A lot of people are going to be redoing forms and just going in there. So just be aware that it is going to be slower. It's going to be boggier. And if you get kicked out, try again, at a different time. But I'm going to say right away in the morning is probably not going to be the best time to jump in there, but definitely give it a try. So I'm going to open up the floor to any questions that anybody has in reference to forms, to these changes happening, anything that you've come across that you're having a little bit more difficulty with. Randy is on the call, so I want to make sure that we have everybody here. So if you have a question, unmute yourself, and if you could just address that, then we'll see what we can do. And we just want to make sure everybody's comfortable before all this stuff rolls out. So any questions out there?
Maybe not.
Can't hear you, Sean.
I could hear you for a second, Sean, if you want to unmute. There we go.
Oh, okay.
There we are.
If I just push the right button, that'd probably be a lot better. So I just want to be perfectly clear. On August 1st, I need to have, I have 2 existing listings and they need to sign the new documents on that day. Correct?
I would highly recommend that you get the new listings. Yeah, all the listing.
Do I need to cancel the listing and re-sign it on August 1st or just extend the exact same dates? Or
Just basically extend it out. So I would just get contracts signed. You don't need to cancel it on the MLS or do anything unless you're, really, really making some changes.
and the
but
MLS
no.
will automatically remove my payout that's on those listings right now.
Correct. Yep, that's automatically going to happen. So you don't need to go in there and take any of that commission out or excuse me, compensation. See, we all
Right.
have to get used to this. They're going to automatically do that. So that's not something that we have to do.
And any buyer rep agreements that I have right now, I don't need to change those at all, right?
If you have in there what you want in those buyer rep as far as percentages and you've explained it to them, then you should be fine. There are changes on that form, but they're minor. If you've really gone through and explained it, you should be okay.
Okay, because I'm going to have to pretty much actually start doing, I guess, buyer evaluate, the little buyer evaluation meetings before, because a lot of times I met people for the last 20 years for the first time on a showing. And then I did, like a lot of people do, I put my buyer rep agreement, I don't even make them sign it till they sign the first purchase agreement. I mean, I explain everything to them, but I just always tried to keep hands off with the contracts with them because people were, so not wanting to sign it. But now I'm going to have to really give buyer consultations. They had to become part of my business plan, I guess. It's no choice.
Yeah, it is really, really tricky. And what I will say is my hardest part about when I do it, because I have a lot of Zillow calls that come in and I tell them, I can't show you this property until we get this form signed. If we just sign it for the day that we're going to look at it, I'm fine with that. And then what happens is I end up getting it extended, for 6 months
Right.
after they meet me, after we go through all that. But the other thing too, Sean, that I also do is if they're not pre-approved, I typically am not taking people on showings of properties anymore, because I want to make sure that they're legit.
Right.
And
I used to do one. I used to do like the first showing, then I'm like, okay, send me an approval letter for the next.
Yeah.
But even then, you throw a lot of strikes, then you throw a lot of balls with that, so you miss the plate.
It's hard because it's almost everybody in the industry has to get used to this. And I know there's going to be agents out there that aren't going to be following the rules. But what I'm telling you guys is it's easier to just follow these and set a standard in our industry. We need this change to happen so we don't have all those looky-loos, just calling and doing random things. I think this will help in the fact that we're going to have committed people looking at properties instead of wasting everybody's time. And that's how I see it.
True. Thank you.
Not a problem, Sean. And thank you for being on the call today.
I think you're right that it'll professionalize things. Like you're just going to have to, because I remember, now I've been 17 years, but I remember dragging people around that were just without pre-approvals, just not knowing better or just thinking it'll work out. I don't know, but I saw a lot of houses. It's a good way to, if you want to see a lot of houses and have a good excuse and not be showing up by yourself, perfect. Take those people, take them all over the place and go see everything. And then the market. I mean, that's what it's useful for. But yeah, otherwise you're just wasting a lot of gas sometimes.
Well, and I just say to people, I don't want people to be pre-approved for like 300,000 and all of a sudden we're showing them, a $500,000 house. It doesn't, like, they really do need to know what they're pre-approved for, and we have to stay in those guidelines.
I guess this is Andrew. I will probably be listing something here pretty soon in August, relative. And I just want to get a little bit more clarity as far as that compensation piece for what we can offer or what my seller can offer to a buyer. And then where does that discussion happen? you know, as far as.
So Andrew, I mean, this has always been, any compensation to the buyer has always been negotiable and always open to anything. The problem with what has happened is us realtors have, kind of set that standard. You know, everybody always throws out the 6%. And it's not that that was always like firm. That's always been negotiable. But what I would say is, you know, right now, because you can see that compensation right now still in the MLS, wherever your listing is, what I'm doing is I'm actually showing clients, like, this is the compensation that's getting paid out on this listing right now. And so I'm pulling like 3 or 4 in that area, and I'm showing them like it's 2.5 or it's 2.7. And just really saying like, this is what other people are doing in your neighborhood, but it's open to having a conversation. And I'm having that conversation when I'm getting the listing signed, because again, we have to walk through that in those listing documents. We have to be very specific about what that's going to be. Does that help?
So yeah, so let's say I'm going to charge my client, let's say 2%. I'm going to charge my client 2% to list it, put it on the market out there, so forth. I get an offer. I know that compensation is not listed anywhere on the MLS. And then that comes up, you know, as far as the buyer rep asking me as far as the commission goes.
Correct.
So I've had, let's say I've had a separate conversation with my, other than the 2% that I'm going to charge, I've asked my seller how much are they willing to pay, you know, a buyer commitment, a buyer compensation. And let's say they say $1,000 or something like that. Is that doable? Is that something that I'm pretty sure it's got to be on the contract, but when that conversation comes up from the buyer rep, how is that presented, I guess?
Well,
So-
what buyer's gonna take $1,000 unless it's $100,000 house? That's what, $50,000 house? I mean, for the amount of time and energy and fees, and this is a job, this is a living, I mean, you cannot be just, you really need to have the conversation with the seller that you are listing for them, but there are other people looking for this property. And if you are not willing to pay for them to bring people, you will be overlooked. I showed 13
that
houses,
piece.
you know, just to be fair, we'd still be, it's not like all of a sudden no one's going to get paid.
Correct. Yeah, no. And I guess the compensation piece as far as how much and it kind of that part I'm not too worried about as far as how much we are willing to offer to our buyer. I'm just throwing in a number, $1,000, probably, you know, a condo or something like that you're selling for 100,000. I totally get that, but I'm just throwing a number out there. I'm more of the piece of the paperwork in between agent buyer and agent seller. As far as that piece, and they ask for the compensation, is there a contract, a separate piece that we between the agents have to kind of pass along?
So basically last week, Andrew, we had went over a few different of the changes that are happening. So let's just say, for instance, what's going to happen is you're going to have a buyer's rep call you on your listing, and they're going to say, what are you offering for buyer agent compensation? And then you're going to let them know. I'm offering 2%. I'm offering 2.5, whatever that's going to be. You're going to have a phone call with that. Then they can send it over in the purchase agreement. There's a new spot in the purchase agreement. And I will have Jeremy, if you could make a note to please, let's send out that video to everybody at NRG from last week. Just so everybody's kind of aware of that and they can watch it back. Again, it's on the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen is it's going to be in the purchase agreement. If they're going to ask for more, it's going to be in there, or there's a different compensation form that the brokers have to sign that agrees to that commission.
Gotcha.
Excuse me, compensation. See how tough it is, you guys? So that's gonna be how moving forward, how we're gonna see things happen. Again, they're gonna call and then it's gonna be either in the purchase agreement or it's gonna be on a compensation form between the brokers. And that compensation form like really cements it in that you are gonna get paid that, or you're paying that out. Yep.
Okay, okay, then that just kind of explains it a little bit there. So
Yes,
then
and
our original contract that we're signing with the seller has that broken down as well.
correct. Yep.
Okay.
So basically, let me pull up here. I have to kind of take a look and see which in the listing contract. Let's just, it's gonna basically be the same, but then when you get down to, line 119, you always put, like, let's just say for instance, and again, this is very hypothetical and I'm just using this as an example, you guys. So let's just say on line 119 of the listing contract, we are, we're gonna do 6% commission, 3% is going to the listing agent, and then down below it has what you're offering to the buyers for the buyer's compensation, and we're offering 3% on that. You would break that down in that listing contract. That listing contract though is not going to the buyer's agent. We're still
Keeping that.
holding on to that.
Okay.
You don't want to show them that whatsoever. Honestly, what it boils down to as well is, what does that buyer's agent have his buyers on his buyer's representation as well? So it's just a lot of negotiating that's going to be happening.
Gotcha. Okay. That kind of explains things.
It's going to be tricky at first. And again, we're going to be walking through this quite a bit. After everything kind of changes over, that's when I think we're going to really, really see the shifts happening and the conversations happening. I will share with you guys, I had my first listing appointment last week and I have a seller that's offering 0. And I said, I do not recommend this. I gave her the history, I gave her the facts, I told her everything. And I basically said, I don't know how many people we're going to get through the door. So you have to promise me if we don't have a lot of showings or we have a lot of activity after that first week, we are going to have to do an amendment to the listing contract and offer something. But I am willing to do this with you, but you also have to be willing to change it if something does happen. Because I'm not sure how it's going to go. And it's not something I have to guide the clients in the direction. Ultimately, it's up to them. But it does make my job a lot trickier. That's for sure. All right. Any other questions out there that we have? I know Randy was putting in the chat.
It's
Good
March.
morning, everybody.
I-
Happy Tuesday.
Oh,
Amazing.
I'm not sure.
I don't know who's talking.
Oh, that's a recording. I'm not sure where that's coming from. But anyway,
Oh.
go ahead, Marge.
I was just gonna say, I really feel like the secret to success is meeting expectations. I have a million things that I get I have 5 different businesses that I get reviewed on, and I get 5-star reviews. And it's not because I'm like, my product's not the best, my whatever, but it's like at setting the expectations. And I feel like they really need to know how important it is for buyers to for agents. You're working with a network of thousands of agents to come see your property, and if you want to try to be cheap and not pay those people, it's going to kick you in the butt. You're not going to have showings. I'm wondering if there's a way to put anything in so that agents that do plan on showing, like in showing time, to say, this has 0 buyer rep compensation. So please talk to me first or ask first, or so that it doesn't come to a head where it's like, oh my God, I showed this property and now you're telling me I won't get paid because they don't understand. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we can't put anything in showing time.
You can't put that no compensation is being
No.
offered. Okay.
No.
All right.
The
I haven't
problem with
watched the video yet, so I'll I'll do
What I
that.
was really hoping is I was hoping that it could go in showing time, because obviously you can send that out for, the instructions on how to show your property. Anything that's coming from the MLS as far as like feeding, so an IDX platform, if it's feeding into that, we can't put anything about compensation on there. What I will highly recommend is you put it in your agent remarks to say something about call listing agent for more information. It just somehow wording it to, like, honestly, right now, you guys, and I know this, and I talked to another agent the other day who said, I'm not picking up my phone. I am not talking to these people. And I was like, how are you going to sell a house then? The goal is to sell
Why
a
would you
house.
do that? That's
And
crazy.
so I'm like, pick up the phone, answer the phone calls. And I know it's going to suck for a minute, but we just have to navigate through this.
Do you think
Yeah,
there's
hey,
anything
this is
Zillow
Randy. I
can
just
do?
got a minute here because I got to go into an appointment. And I just
Okay.
wanted to clarify a couple things for you guys, just because I only had like 2 minutes. But when I listened to Andrew's question and this stuff, so, in Minnesota, nothing's changed. So some of these questions I'm hearing is like almost like somebody has never really read through the listing presentation to read the listing agreement, right? And so when you have a listing agreement, you're going to say, seller, what are we going to pay here? I'm going to charge you 5%, 6%, but we have to decide on this other line, how much are we going to pay the buyer's rep? And we've always done this. And so when you come up with somebody saying, well, I just want to pay 1%, then we're going to have to educate them. So the media blew this out of proportion, right? We have to say, well, if we offer 1% on your house, your neighbors are all offering 2.5. And the buyer's representation agreement that they already have signed to show the houses has compensation that's probably right in that ballpark. And so we really want to sell your house, so we need to be competitive and offer these buyer's agents the correct amount, and then that's how you kind of walk through what people are getting paid, because outside of the news media, the only thing that's changed for us is you don't get to look at it in the MLS and see the number. We got to call the broker or the sales rep and see the number that they're paying. And it's really like, when you look at how simple that is, that's the only difference. It's just more work for us to figure out what the fee is. And then there's everybody who's got to navigate around the media is kind of blowing it up like nobody's getting paid anymore, right? But it's just not true. So we called Lofty, and Lofty has an area where if anybody is a subscriber, you can drop down a box and put a co-op fee in. So our company website can have our own stuff, but we can't publish the co-op fees for all the other companies' websites. So you have to go to each company's website or call their front desk or the agent to find out the co-op. And so with something like showing time, it could be call agent about co-op amount or whatever, but we can't put any numbers in there. We can't encrypt them, right? And so I know it's kind of a lot of information real quick, but when you look at this, like, we've always had legal forms in Minnesota. And now the only thing that has changed is they're yanking out the co-op amount, so we can't see it, which is almost like ludicrous. It's just, it doesn't make a ton of sense. But I guess it's probably their start at trying to change the industry. Who knows what will come in the future, right? So when you look at it that simply, you just know that everybody's still got to buy a rep form and everybody still has a listing form, right? We just got to call and ask what the co-op is. It's just foolish, but that's all it is.
Will Zillow be able to put something online? Because I feel like this is just one more cash grab from Zillow, that they're going to have an app that
I
that
don't
will
think
be-
so, because all of Zillow and Realtor.com, theirs is all feeding from the MLS too. So I know that I don't think they're going to be able to as well. But, we got to just wait and see what happens. That's for sure.
I feel like they lobby for the rules. I mean, now there's the advertising thing on there that we never had before, whatever that homes that, advertise here, blah, blah, blah. It's so infiltrated by Zillow.
Yeah.
They could just as
Yeah.
well run the thing.
I'm like, yes. One thing I did want to bring up too, as long as Marge is on here, because I know she sent me a message earlier today about, being a little bit more creative with properties. I will tell you right now, we are definitely feeling in the market that properties that are on the higher price point and are just kind of like sitting, and there's just showings kind of sprinkling in. So Marge did bring up the fact of, contract for deeds and just getting super creative. So do you want to touch on that for a second, Marge?
Well, just I wondered if anybody else is getting or making offers that are to do a contract for deed where you can take over their loan, that you will be responsible for, you would have to show, to me, you'd have to show proof that you are valid for a loan. That, so I have a cash buyer, but they wanted to wait out a couple months and then I know what their rate is, which is better than market because they're getting a family loan. But if they could take over the previous owner's loan, and if the bank actually called for it, they can step up and pay for it and refinance that immediately, but otherwise they would avoid that for whatever length of time. And I, as you know, went for a contract for deed that ended up getting the bank involved, and the bank is keeping that contract for deed for 2 more years as it was on paper at a better than market rate. And so I'm thinking a lot of banks, rather than foreclosing on the previous owner, are all willing to do that kind of thing as long as the loan gets paid. I mean, I know it says that in the contract, so I'm wondering if other people are having that experience and how it's going. And that stems from that Blaine. I keep using the Blaine example for months now, but the Blaine one where I had the Ukrainian guy come and he's shaking down everybody that's on the almost foreclosed list. And then they take over the loan and but they're able to finance it if they have to. And they're putting renters in and getting paid by the government, basically, our government.
Is anybody on the call, working on any contract for deeds, or no? Is that?
And I'm
I
wondering
have
what title
several
company.
contract for deeds out there.
Okay.
I mean, I don't understand exactly what rabbit hole we're going down here, but with the banks, when I had all the foreclosure accounts, they would always try to work something out with the homeowner before they foreclosed. And a contract for deed holder, they take about 120 days to get somebody out of a house, but anybody would try to probably renegotiate depending on their financial position. I just bought a guy out that was losing his contract for deed, and the seller was trying to take $100,000 to equity. And then I stepped in and saved it and gave him a new loan. And the judge allowed an extension because the seller, they could see kind of what was happening. But I don't know. When somebody's got a high equity position in something, it's time to take advantage of the rules and kick somebody out, right?
Randy, are you using Guardian Title? I just wondered if there's a title company that does those best. Is that
Guardian Title will draft up the deed. Yeah, if anybody doesn't know, when you do a contract for deed, your purchase agreement is not the contract for deed. It's the terms of the contract for deed. And then there's a state form for conveyance that is a deed. And then certain language gets put in there. The Guardian Title will do it for like $350. Some title companies won't do it. If anybody has an attorney on staff, they'll figure it out. But I know Guardian already has it figured out. So, because James, who started that company, was an attorney. Jamie and Ken's dad, passed away. So they have all the templates to do them for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, now that we've kind of gone on that, any other questions, situations that you guys want to go over with these forms changes, anything you're coming across with buyers, with sellers, any good examples that we can share? Again, the more we can share, the more everybody's going to know, and it's going to help.
Jill, I was wondering, so my seller is on vacation, so I take it then the property is not going to be listed until they come back, right? Because they have to sign a new form.
Do you currently have it on the MLS right now?
Yes.
Then it's going to stay on the MLS. Nothing's going to change on that end. It's just the fact that getting the new listing signed. You're not going to cancel it on the MLS. You're not going to do anything. You're just protecting you and the brokerage, saying that you went over the changes on the form. So I would do it, Grace, when she gets back.
Okay, I guess I missed it. Okay, so what other form do I have them sign?
So there's a new
Mhm.
listing contract that's going to be coming out on the 1st.
Right.
So that's basically you mimic everything that you have in your current one, but you know, those yellow sections are the things that you need to highlight out, and you really need to go over, you know, are we going to continue that buyer's agent compensation? Is this what you want to do? And just explain the fact to them that these changes are happening because of this NAR settlement.
Okay.
Yep. So nothing is changing in the MLS besides that buyer's agent compensation is not going to be listed there. But because we have new forms coming out on the 1st to protect everybody and make sure that everybody fully understands this, like your clients, you want to make sure that you're going over those forms again as soon as you possibly can. But your listing is not going to be taken off of the MLS.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions that you guys have in reference to this? And again, no question is dumb. We're walking through this, and this is going to help other people.
I have another thing about the buyer rep agreements. So we're gonna have a ton of buyer rep agreements and no purchase agreements because, right, that's kind of the evolution of things. So if we have a new user at NRG, we're going to take the buyer rep agreements and we're going to scan them into a Dropbox folder and name them by the agent and the client name, so that if we get a phone call from a complaint on the MLS, right, that's how we're policing. If somebody has a non-represented buyer, or somebody calls and says they don't have their paperwork, the MLS is going to call us and try to and ask if we do, right? And so we're going to have people scan in their agency representation and buyer agreements, and then we'll keep a copy in case we get a phone call. And so also, the reason for that is because we don't want to just expand users in Suite Assistant unless you're already a user, just for buyer rep agreements. But so also then when you get a listing, you're going to want to tell, you know, I suppose, email the admin at nrgadmin.com, and then we'll update you know, our information, and then we'll store a copy so that if somebody winds up calling the front desk, I'm hoping that I'm trying to deter everybody to a central place. It's probably going to be a page on our website for NRG listings only co-op. But if you send that the amount to the co-op, or make sure you're uploading your listing paperwork to Suite Assist, you know, then we can look it up if somebody calls us and we can tell them what the co-op is. So I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, so what you're kind of saying, Randy, is it's very important to get your documents into compliance. As far as, you know, buyers reps agencies, like right away, because if the state calls and says, well, you did a showing through this house, now we need to audit you and see that you had a buyer rep signed for those people, they can call the brokerage and do that.
Yeah. And then if the agent now is off on a cruise and we can't get a hold of them, we look pretty silly. So we need to get them more timely until we find out if this is going to be a loose or a tight rule. But I think we need to consider it that it's going to be, you know, really enforced, and so we need to get the copies. So everybody can just scan them to admin at NRG admin if you don't remember the other emails, and then we'll get forwarded to whoever's going to store them for you.
So I would highly recommend getting those in as soon as you possibly can. And then the other thing is not holding on to listing paperwork. Make sure that you're getting that into Anne for compliance. Make sure she's, you know, checking it. And then also having that buyer's agent compensation in case we do get phone calls, because they can call the office or they can call the agent. So it's just really, really good to know. So that way our admin has that information. Any questions about that, you guys? I know it's going to be
I have a question.
Yep.
So I'm sorry I've missed the last couple of huddles. So is anybody like, if you're working with a new buyer that you've never met before, and obviously now everybody has to play the game. And even though I haven't made people sign a buyer's rep until they feel comfortable with me, maybe 2 or 3 showings, and I'm going to change my practices. But is anybody else just thinking, well, I'll just do a 1-month buyer's contract so that they're not quite so squeamish to sign it? And then also kind of on that same route, if I have a buyer that doesn't have the money to pay me, and if they want to see a house that the seller, isn't going to pay, like I've never charged a retainer fee, but I'm thinking if I have a buyer that doesn't have the money to pay a commission, I think I'm going to start charging retainer fees. And how do is that a retainer fee that gets sent to NRG? And then also, for instance, you, Jill, if you have a seller that's refusing commission, are you going to consider doing a retainer fee?
I've been going back and forth on this retainer, and also offering like 3 different options, to people. And I'm looking at that. I just haven't had enough time, to really get focused in on that yet. As far as like the buyer rep and what's in there, I've never gone back after a client. Let's just say if I only get paid 2%, but their buyer rep said 2.5, like I'm just taking it. It's going to kind of depend on what it is, but a lot of what we had talked about too, I think it was last week or the week before, is about like rolling that into their loan. And so I'm really, really working with my lenders on like, can we roll some of the stuff in? But then I have to change the verbiage also on the purchase agreements, because we need to make sure that it appraises out correctly to have all of that stuff in there. So I guess I'm going to say I'm getting really creative on things, but I am signing buyer reps for like 1 day. If they like me and I show them the value after that one showing, I'm getting them to extend it out. And I haven't had a problem with them, extending it out after they get to know me and get to know my style. Extending it out, 6 months or 30 days, whatever they're going to give me, I'm going to be comfortable with. But I'm just doing like a 1-day showing, on those buyer rep, and then just explaining to them, like, we have to get this extended. Randy's going to have to answer the question in reference to the retainer.
Yeah, retainer fees can be charged up front. They have to go to NRG because you can't get paid. The broker gets paid, right? And so you have to charge enough to cover what you're going to do. So we'd probably treat it like a referral fee up until there's a closing. And then we cap it at $595. So like probably 80-20 kept at $595. So if you get $1,000, we'll probably have $200. And then if you close it, we get another, whatever equals $595, right? So you have to have them collected, written to the broker. It's the law. And so the other thing, you guys, I just thought about, this question kind of comes out like, well, if somebody's not going to pay, you're not going to work with them. So it's the same as before, right? You're signing up an agreement to pay. And so if we have like an example of a seller that tries not to put a buyer co-op, we got to educate them. So here's what's going to happen. You're not going to buy a buyer co-op, and we're going to make these guys do a bunch of backflips to get their commission anyways, because they're going to need to. Then they're going to put it in the purchase agreement. They're going to stack it on the listing price. And the MLS listing price is basically the target for an appraiser. And so if an appraiser sees a $300,000 property in the MLS, it just goes in their head that that's their value. So if we offer it within the price that we post on the, the public access system, which is the MLS, we got to roll it into the price now when we list your home, so you don't have any problems down the road when the buyer tries to close. Last thing you need is to say, I don't want to pay somebody, but you're going to wind up paying anyways. And the house comes in at, PA for 309, but the appraiser saw 300 on the MLS and now says nobody qualifies to buy your house and you're 45 days off the market, right? So I just kind of thought of that right now, but there's a handful of these scenarios that we'll be able to talk through with each other. And so it's good that you asked that question, because I wouldn't have came up with this. And so that's part of all of this, is just a little trial and error. And, like that one guy said, it's the same way to the same destination. It's just two different highways. And so we just need to work together and make sure that we, help each other come up with, I guess, objections, management stuff and all that stuff. Yeah. So any retainers got to be written out to NRG, though. That's the law in the state.
Randy, if anybody does that retainer and sends it in, obviously, getting the documents information, I'm assuming Francis and Ann are the ones that we want to get that to, correct?
Yeah. If it's a retainer, it's a transaction because we receive money. So you probably get it uploaded in Sweet Assist, right? It's going to be part of your listing agreement or your buyer agreement. I don't know many people charging retainers. And if, we used to charge them when we did short sales because there was a lot of upfront work. So we charged $1,000 or whatever. But unless you have a reason to make somebody pay up front, I don't see it happening very often. It's just like a discussion because we know it's one of the available methods of getting paid. But yeah, so you'll have to turn in the paperwork that legally they agreed to the retainer, and a copy of the check will have to go to the office and get processed. Yep.
Okay. Marie, does that help? All right, it's okay. Any other questions that you guys have in reference to this? Any objections you've had come up? Anything along that lines?
Jill, I understand the whole negotiation and education piece on the seller side, but on the buyer side, if you're representing a buyer, they probably see the world as their oyster and all houses are the same and don't even know about this commission piece in there. So can you just do the education from the buyer side, kind of in the same scenario?
Yeah. So basically what I'm doing is, I always set up like a consultation with them before I go out and show them properties. I've done that all along. So if that means I have to jump on a Zoom call with them because time is crazy, or I have to meet with them beforehand, I'm walking through that agency document. I'm explaining who's all involved in a transaction. Then we step over to the buyer's rep. And I'm walking them all the way through the buyer's rep. But what I'm saying to them now is, we are not guaranteed, nor have we ever been guaranteed, but we're seeing it much more now, that the seller is going to pay the buyer's agent compensation. And that's to me. So what I'm saying to them is whatever percentage that we put in here, if we don't get that from the listing and the sales side, then we need to rework it into your loan, or we need to come up with a creative way, or you guys have to pay it to me because I do not work for free. And usually when I say to people, I do not work for free, they're like, no, I wouldn't work for free. And then just really, really understanding to them that, I have access to the MLS. I know you guys are looking at Zillow and Realtor.com and all those places, but I have more of that access that I can see. And then I also say, I have the knowledge and expertise of negotiating a deal for you and helping you through this entire process, and getting you into the home that you want. That also is going to be like the most cost effective, the best way to do it. So a lot of it is it's, I start the conversation out when I go over that buyer rep. What have you heard in the media? Because when I ask them, what have you heard in the media, or what have you seen about this NAR settlement? Usually they'll start throwing stuff out there. And when they do that, then I can take that narrative and I can change it and go, well, I'm going to educate you about this real quick. But by the time that I get done with that, explaining that buyer rep, and getting them through the system and the process, they're okay with it. And they're like, yeah, I don't want to deal with any of that stuff.
And like everybody's business is kind of their own business, but it does open the door to more negotiation in terms of what number you're going to decide on. And are you kind of evaluating the amount of work that you're going to put into that particular client?
Yeah, I mean, there's pieces that I know are gonna be a little bit more trickier, so it's, you have to gauge it on how much time, how much effort. And there are things that I'm like, I know I'm not gonna do that client justice, so I have to refer it off to somebody else. Cause I know I'm not going to. At the end of the day, if I feel like in my gut, I can't do the job that I need to do for a listing or a buyer, then I need to find somebody who is going to help them with that. I did one yesterday where I referred it off because I just said, I just don't have enough time right now. And I can't show you 60 houses. It's not doable. So I know we don't ever want to say no to business. Nobody does. But there has to be a point in a time where you go, I got to let this one go. I got to do them justice and do it the right way.
But aren't you doing referrals on those? Aren't
Yeah.
we-
Oh gosh, you guys.
What
Yeah.
are
No,
we
I'm getting a
Easiest
referral
thing
fee.
ever if it works.
Yes.
Okay.
No, and
Yeah.
I'm usually, I'll say like 25, 30% referral fee. It just kind of depends on the situation. But no, I'm sending, I always get referral fees. I do not, no, because I'm connecting them with somebody else.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean,
And I'm
that's
putting,
better money anyway. You've just dodged a bullet of showing 60 houses.
yes. So it's literally just looking at it from that aspect and saying, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to take the 25% and I'm going to be good with it.
Yeah, and that person's excited to pay it because now they have a buyer.
Correct. Yep. And you find somebody who's eager and really wants to do that, and again has the time and the energy behind it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, how many people are even hearing it? I mean, I feel like it's not about us, it's about them. People are really into their own lives, not everything else. I would say most of your clients have never even heard anything about this NAR. How would they? It's our own internal turmoil that has nothing to do with the general public, in the sense that they still will be paying both sides. So I don't even know if there's a need to bring it up, but you've said you've already talked to people. I wouldn't even ask, like, what have you been hearing about the industry? Because I would think they don't even have a clue.
You would be surprised, March. A lot
Okay.
of it, like I usually get, oh yeah, I seen that on the Today Show, or I read it in the paper. There is what got portrayed on this at the beginning was sellers are going to save money and buyers are going to be able to, get costs down. And so it's funny because when I heard all of that stuff, it was like, that's not true. That's not any of this stuff. So I guess I do try and ask, like, what have you heard? And then it's just a step into how can I educate you, moving forward. If they haven't heard anything, then I'm like, hey, okay, I'm gonna walk you through this and just let you know a little bit of the tidbits about it. But it's actually better because again, they're hearing it from a professional, not the TV.
I feel like if you say what have you heard, then they're gonna start doing a Google search and go down some rabbit hole and go, well, I should be able to just go get this without I don't know. It's just my opinion that a lot of people are less educated on this. Just like when you go to the doctor and you don't know all, unless you see picket signs outside, you didn't know that there's this internal, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean,
there's
literally,
nurses on strike or something. I mean, it's just,
yeah.
it's our own little thing, is that I want to buy a house. Here's the houses, and I've seen them on Zillow, and I've seen them on, and my friends are sharing them. But a lot of times, yeah, that bringing it up means then they will start researching more than
I mean,
otherwise. So, yeah,
I don't think that that's a bad thing. I always tell people, if I'm the only person you're interviewing, interview somebody else too, because of the fact that I know what I do will shine through. I know my value. And if they don't see my value, I'm okay with them going to somewhere else that's going to give them whatever they're going to give them. I know not everybody can do that. And I understand, but as time has gone on, like, you guys have to see your value and you have to know that your time and your effort put into this is worth something. So you have to believe in yourself and really, really see that. And if they don't, be willing to walk away from it.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So you're saying buyer agent agreement and you're putting that number in, whatever it may be, say it's 2.5. They sign it, everything's good to go. You go off and start looking at some properties and you're calling those agents to find out what the co-op is. And the co-op's 2.7. Does that mean your payout's 2.7?
Depends on what you have on that buyer rep contract. Remember what we had said, you can't ever go higher. So if you have 2.5, that's what you're gonna get is 2.5. If the seller is offering 2.7, great. I would then, talk to the buyers about that. I would have them sign that compensation form saying that they understand that you're getting 2.7. Because everybody does sign that. But again, I cautioned you guys on go higher on that buyer rep form because you can always go lower, but you can't go up legally. So just really make sure that you're protecting yourself in that as well.
On the safe side, on our end, we just put like, for example, 2.7 rather than putting 2.5.
Correct. I would go on the high side. Yes. Yep. I'm even, and again, we are not talking about, this is whatever you guys want to do. We're not telling you what percentages to put in there, going like 3. Because again, if you do get 2.7 or you get 2.5, you're still okay in that. Yep. Because there are, go ahead, Marge.
I have 2.7 on my agreement, and the house that we ended up getting the offer on is 2.3. And I was going to ask for more, but I did the math because the original agreement was a much lower price house. And at 2.3, I'm still getting a better commission than the previous offer because of the price of the house. But I want to have it on there so that so when the title company, so somewhere along there, it's like, oh, she's giving you back $800,
You're getting a
so
deal.
It sounds, yeah. I think that's, that's fair.
Yeah, definitely. No, again, playing it on the safe side with that buyer rep, just make sure that you guys are going higher just because we don't know. There was I think Andrew talked about it last week. He had said he had changed compensation on one of his listings. He was offering like 4% or something because they need to get the property sold. And he knew that he needed to get things in. That is, very unheard of to see. But again, it goes back to the reference of they're trying to sell a property and they're trying to get as many people through as they can. In my listing presentation, it does go over the fact of like what dual agency is and how often were you actually using dual agency. And a majority of the time, you guys, I educate my clients, letting them know that, 90% of the time I am not bringing that buyer. Somebody else is bringing that buyer in. And if dual agency happens, it does exist, but it's just not happening as much as it used to. And again, I look at like the area that you're in. I know Janelle Lake, who is up north with Energy, she does a lot of dual agencies, but it's because there's not a lot of real estate agents in her area. She's also doing a lot of facilitator agreements because people are like, oh, I don't want to list it with you and I don't want to pay all this. So then she's negotiating it and saying, I can facilitate this for you, but it's going to cost this much in order to do that paperwork. So again, just getting really creative and making sure that there are options out there. We just have to educate the clients around those options. Marge, I did want to say one thing that I did win out with a for sale by owner was I literally printed off all of the paperwork that needed to happen in a transaction. And that stack between the listing, the disclosures, and I set it down and I said, hey, here's all the listing documents. Can you explain this? Or can you go over all? And they were like, no, I don't know anything about this. Or I was like, you need to have lead-based paint. You have to have all this stuff. And they were like, I didn't know that. And I'm like, this is why you hire a professional.
Good. That's great. That's a good way to do it. Because it looks more intimidating than it is when you're not familiar.
nobody knows purchase agreements, our listing contracts, our disclosures like we do in the industry. And that's where I'm like, when they look at, we know this, we have our clients that are, you know, looking at a property disclosure and they're like, I got to check all these boxes or I have to say all this stuff. And we're like, yep. And you got to fill it out. And they're like, oh gosh, you know, like it's overwhelming to them. And they're already in the process of trying to sell their house. It's to make your life easier. And that's what I say, like my job is to make your life easier, walk you through this process. So if you have to point things out to them, print it out.
I think there's some stats somewhere. I mean, I don't remember where, but on how many people do not do a for sale by owner because it feels sketchy. They're worried about undisclosed things. So, you know, that with an agent, you're going to do better than a for sale by owner. And a lot of times you're not priced right because you're trying to get it sold by yourself. So you're giving a deal and you're really just leaving money on the table anyway.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot more like limited listings too on the MLS. I've been seeing a lot more of those where, you know, agents are putting it on the MLS for a certain fee, but it says like contact, you know, a seller to set up things. So I am seeing a lot more limited.
For sale by owner, really, isn't it? I mean, that's just paying the base for them to put it on MLS for you.
Yeah. Yep. Almost kind of in a way, it's like being in between a facilitator and, you know, listing, but it's a limited listing contract. Yeah.
Do we have some stats somewhere to point to that everybody's having very, very light showings? Like I mean, it's been brutal in my 17. I mean, I've never had that. Go ahead.
Every association has InfoSparks. It's all the data of how many people are in all the housing markets at. Is that what you're asking?
Well, yeah, that how many showings versus 2 months ago? Because I'm like having nothing. And I've never had nothing. I just am feeling very like, does my listing work? You know, is there something? What am I not seeing here?
Yeah, right. What's the magic trick that you have forgotten?
Right. Yeah.
I'll type InfoSparks. It should be part of the MLS. There might be data in there for that to show that exact area.
Okay.
But remember, all that data is late, right? Data after. So right now,
you're breaking up. Are you on the boat?
Yeah.
Marge, what I will tell you is oh, you're breaking up, Randy. Marge, go into that InfoSpark, and then also there is some stuff on the MLS. What I will tell you is don't think that it's just happening with your listing. I'm saying that we're kind of seeing it industry wide, and this is how I look at it. Usually the months with J's are the hardest months. January, we know why January is hard. June, it can be iffy. July is always slow. And you know why it's always slower? Because everybody figured out that it's summer and everybody's super busy. And so they're really not focusing on, oh, I have to move before the kids start school. As we start, you know, trickling down into August now, I think we're going to start seeing more activity. And then also, you know, I never use this as an excuse, but it is true. You know, we've got a really interesting political climate going on right now that's making a lot of people nervous, and interest rates haven't, you know, come down huge, which I, again, don't think they're going to until after we get through December. So there are things, but why a listing isn't selling, I said this to you guys last week. There's 3 reasons: price, marketing, and showings. So it's like, how can you generate those 3 things and get them moving? But sometimes it's not about price. I mean, sometimes you just got to sit and be patient. Days on market is much longer than what it used to be. And that's the hard part. You know, I'm telling my clients, when I pull up a listing and then I look at the days on market in that area, it's significantly longer than what it used to be. But ours, you know, we're really going like, we didn't sell that house in a weekend. What's wrong with it? It's that mentality that we need to actually come past, because of the fact that we were in that market for a good few years and we had amazing, but we're walking into a different market and things are changing. So I think average days on market I seen last week were over 40. I mean, it's changing. It's changing for sure. But yeah, we just got to keep rolling with those changes and get through it. We are going to get through this. And like I had said, you just have to show your value, and really educate your clients as much as possible. And we're here to help you with that process. So definitely don't feel like you're alone out there, because again, these conversations are what we need to have. So, all right, it's 10 o'clock, top of the hour. I know everybody's super busy. We will come at this with some more information. Again, as things start coming up, we are going to have conversations about this. Please watch for those new rollout forms to happen on August 1st. Again, the disclaimer that transaction desk is probably going to go down, but be patient with it. That's not something we can control. Use the word compensation instead of commission, and remember, everything is negotiable. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Jill. Great meeting.
Thanks,
Yes.
Jill.
As always.
All right. Have a
As
good
always,
week.
Thanks so much for doing this. Bye,
Any
everybody.
Bye,
questions?
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye,
Randy.
guys.
Bye.